I'm not gonna do it this time.
You promise?
Yes.
Ben, can you just fast forward it to that last clip of this guy? Now listen to what he promises. Listen to what he says to his wife.
I'm not gonna do it this time.
Okay, wait, do it again.
I'm not gonna do it this time.
You promise?
Yes.
Okay, you can't tell my boss, but I spent a significant part of the afternoon watching that 5 seconds. Just over, and I even sent it to people. I'm like, hey, here's how we need to help our wives bring in the groceries. And several of them were like, yeah, when I want to get a divorce, and just like, oh my goodness. So the reason I showed you all these are friends, right? These are people that people had put their trust in. These are people that they thought they could rely on the other person. And what's funny is there's different levels. I mean, there is some outright, like, I'm going to, end your trust in me, like the last one. And then there's the subtle ones where you don't necessarily think of the person as a bad friend, but somebody was filming all of these. So even if it wasn't actually their fault that something bad happened, they stood by and what? Watched, and they let it happen, and then in most cases they laughed. They laughed really hard, and I will tell you that I have had my share of being on both ends of that little teeter-totter, I've got some of that. But this idea of friends, okay? This is something that every one of us in the room has at some level. This is, I guarantee, without exception, this is something that every person in the room desires. Friendship. And friendship, the definition of friendship, a person who loves and respects another person. A person who loves and respects another person. And in my life, I have had a variety of different kinds of friendships, of closeness and importance of people in my life. But there was a guy in high school. My best friend in high school, his name was Dave. And Dave and I actually had, we were kind of known as like, oh, this is my adventure partner, Dave. We went whitewater rafting together. We would mountain bike together. We would hike together. We would play with rattlesnakes together. We would, it got to a point where we were so adventurous that we started giving each other points for injuries. Because we'd be out doing something and I'd dare him to jump some sort of chasm on his mountain bike, knowing he was going to just endo up in the ditch. And so he'd break his arm and I'd be like, yeah, that's worth 7 points, and then later on I'd be using a knife and I'd slit my thumb off and they'd have to reattach and he's like, yeah, I think that's worth 9. 9? That was 11 stitches. What do you so Dave and I did everything together. We spent tons of time together. We had lots of fun together. We hung out, and it was one of those things where it was like Dave and Jeff. At school, Dave and Jeff. And wherever Dave was, you knew I was going to be. Wherever I was, you knew that Dave was going to be. But it was interesting as I look back on it, as much as I love Dave, I look back at this, and we never talked about deeper stuff in life. We never talked about our feelings when we were hurting, when we were going through something difficult that we didn't understand. We were never having these deep talks. And you could write that off as like, oh, well, guys don't do that. You know what? Guys do that. Yeah. Guys, and I want to stop here for a second. Because before I go any further, I want to talk to the guys. Men, you have been sold a lie when culture and a lot of times the ladies say that guys aren't in touch with their feelings, that guys don't get emotional, that guys can't be deep, that guys can't be thoughtful, that's a lie. And I want to encourage you right now to come against that lie and to stop believing it and to stop living your relationships under that lie of going, well, yeah, I mean, guys don't cry. Guys do cry. Yeah, well, guys don't like really hurt and have a lot of emotional pain. Guys do have a lot of emotional pain. Well, guys don't, really share their feelings. All of this is a choice. And I can tell you that with my friend Dave, I made the choice that, hey, we had fun together. It's what we did. We went on adventures. We got hurt. We gave each other points. And cool. But we never came to a place in our relationship where Dave was the one that I would go to and be like, I'm really hurting. I'm really struggling. I don't know what to do in this area of my life. My relationship with Dave never went there. And he never went there with me. And yet, in that time in my life, Dave is who I would refer to as my best friend. Who's your best friend, Jeff? Dave. Why? Because he's awesome. And he was awesome. He is awesome. Dave's an incredible guy. But I look back on that relationship and who I was, and the way that I used the term best friend, and I realize now that there was so much more. I wasn't intentionally trying to have a shallow relationship or a superficial relationship. It wasn't intentional or that. It wasn't that. It was just that there was a block or there something that I wasn't realizing, that there could be so much more. I've got a best friend right now named Larry. And this guy, we mountain bike together. We get hurt. Actually, he gets a little more hurt than I do. I'll give him some points, but we spend lots of time together. We have fun together. We vacation together. I love Larry. Larry is an incredible guy in my life. But here's where it gets different. Larry is somebody that I will go to and I'll be like, I'm so lost right now. I don't know what's going on. Larry is somebody who will come to me and say, man, I need you to pray for me, or I need some advice because, man, I am so hurt, or I'm so angry, or I'm so frustrated, or whatever it may be. Larry and I pray for one another. We pray with one another. We share our hearts for our kids together. We share our heart for our spouses together. Larry and I have cried together. And I look at that and I'm like, okay, having all the fun, I'm having all the exciting times and the things that I'm so glad that I get to do that just relieves stress and challenges my adventure and skill and all. I get all of that. But in addition to that, I have somebody that I can go to and I don't have to be okay. Life doesn't have to be good. I don't have to have it all together because I'm a Christian. I don't have to have the happy, smiley face because I'm a pastor. And I look at the depth of that kind of friendship. And I look at what that does in my life and what that does for my life. And that is so important. It is so valuable that I would never want to just settle for, yeah, we mountain bike together. Yeah, we hang out. And I look at so many of the things in our culture. And I realize, and I'm going to preface this because I realize that some of it is just terminology, but I'm afraid that in the terminology that our culture uses, we lose some of the significance. But I look at Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook, if I'm looking for older people. And I see so often me and my bestie and me at the fair, out with my best friend, hanging out with my best friend. And in every picture, it's a different person. It's like this person's account with somebody different. And like, me and my bestie, my best friend and me, so thankful for my best friend. Now, okay, I get it that some of it is in the terminology. But we must not lose the idea and the understanding of what it is to have a best friend and to be a best friend. It's sort of the way that in so many areas our culture has muted the true meaning of the word love. Love this girl, love this guy, love my friend, you love it. And we sort of just make it a descriptor. What part of speech is that? Yeah, like, we're not in school. Just an adjective, right? And what I want us to do tonight is look at why do so many of our relationships, and for some of you, you would say all of your relationships stay so shallow. And I want to encourage you tonight that to take a look at your friendships, even the ones that you would say, my best friend, your closest relationships, and I want to encourage you to consider how deep does that relationship go. I'm not going to judge you. Nobody's judging you. We're not rating you. It's not meant to make you feel guilty. It's so that, like I needed to do and I needed to discover, we take this and we get into the mindset that, oh, somebody that I just like kind of hang out with, somebody I just go to school with, somebody that I'm in band with, best friend. What makes them your best friend? They're in 3 of my classes. And we settle for that. We go, that's it. And as I was watching or listening to Joe's message from last week, I loved it, this call to be accountable to one another, to let people walk with us and challenge us and hold us to what God's calling us to. But one of the things that I realize is that if we don't have any deep relationships, there's no way you're going to be accountable to anybody. If you don't have any deep relationships, there's no way you're going to let anybody in at that level. So tonight, I want us to consider, not to ruin your friendships and not to make you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have any friends. You do have friends. But at what level and how can you make these relationships meaningful the way that God designed you to have relationship? Because God designed you to have relationship, without question. God designed you to be in relationship with Him and with one another. And He doesn't want us to settle for, we kind of just have some classes together, we go to the same school. He wants there to be deep friendship. So, what are some of the reasons that friendships stay superficial? Superficial means just kind of on the surface and easy stuff. There's no depth to it. Well, here are a few things. That relationships take time. Friendships take time. And maybe you can identify with this, that if immediately there isn't like this like really close connection, then you just sort of go, oh yeah, they're not for me. Or you give it a very little amount of time and you decide, okay, that's as deep as we can go. Yeah, we've been hanging out for like 3 days. That's good. That must be, I know everything about them now. And relationship, true relationship takes time. Are you willing to give it the time? True relationship takes effort. One of the things that I realized for so long, I was so unwilling to put any effort into my relationships. I was in whatever relationships facilitated themselves. Whatever relationships, I would talk to anybody who would talk to me. I'd hang out with anybody who would hang out with me. But when it came to pursuing a deep relationship, when it came to really investing in somebody and putting in effort, no, we're good. We ride bikes together. And the relationship stays superficial. Fear holds us back from deep relationship, because if we get into this mindset that if somebody really knew me, if I were to let somebody in the dark places, if I were to acknowledge some of the things that I think and feel, you guys, that's huge for me. And some of you understand that in a variety of ways. You need to know that as a pastor, there is an incredible amount of pressure, either intentional or unintentional, for everything to be great. I've got it together after all. Jesus. And, I've got Jesus. And so I teach Jesus and I worship Jesus. And that pressure to always be okay. There is huge fear, if I let it, that somebody's going to look at me when I'm having a bad day. That if I were to confess, you know what, I'm really not doing well right now in this area, that somebody would be like, oh, and you call yourself a pastor. And fear holds me back and keeps the relationship just, oh no, I'm good. Let's ride bikes. Or maybe you've been burned in the past. And the reason you keep things light, the reason you keep things fun and easy, is because there was a time, in some way, you trusted somebody, you let somebody know something, and they stabbed you in the back, or they used it against you. Or maybe you tried to step out, and you tried to let somebody let someone get to know you, and they didn't respond. They didn't support you the way that you were hoping they would. They didn't accept you the way that you were hoping they would. And you've been burned. And so now you look at these things and go, I'm good. Let's just ride bikes. Let's just be on the same team together. Let's just keep coming to youth group. And we'll laugh and you'll have fun, and laughter and fun and joy and adventures, all important part of friendship. Those can be such connecting things. But those are not supposed to be the places that we stay. Those are not supposed to be the things that we go, all right, that's as close as I'm ever going to get to a person. That's as deep as a relationship can go, because God designed you for so much more. And are you willing to go there? How do we get past these things that hold us back? And there are a few things that I want to just look at real quick tonight before we break off into our detour groups, and we're going to talk about this, and we want to hear from you. We want to give you an opportunity to talk about how do you form your friendships? How do you judge your friendships? What is important to you? What is unimportant to you? What is it that you've shied away from? We want to give you an opportunity to share that, and we want to talk through that with you, because this is important stuff. But best friends talk about meaningful stuff. They tell us when we screw up. And they're there for us when we need them. Now, over and over, Jesus says, do what I do. Okay, so what does Jesus do about friendship? Talk about meaningful stuff. This is what Jesus said. This is my commandment. Now at this point we should go, oh, Jesus. All right, let's listen. Pretty important guy, probably knows something. Okay, he's God. This is my command. Love each other. Yes. See, at this point we could go, yeah, I do. Love each other the same way I have loved you. This should stop us in our tracks. And if you've been around church a while, you've heard this. Love one another just as I have loved you. Okay. This should make us go, whoa, love people like Jesus loved people? How do I do that? There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. This is serious. I mean, Jesus didn't say like, well, first you go to 63 choices. And what's it called? 21 choices? Oh, well, it's not very good. So then you go on some mountain bike rides, and Jesus cuts right to it. He goes, love people the way that I love people. You know how I love people? I'm going to die for them. Well, Jesus, you don't mean like die for people. We are called to lay down our lives for our friends. There have been opportunities and instances where people have literally done that. They have physically laid down their life. They have sacrificed their life for the life of someone else. But that doesn't mean we just go, well, okay, but other than that, I don't have to. Think of the other ways that you would be called to lay down your life, to surrender yourself to somebody else, for someone else's life. If you're going to call someone your best friend, and if they're going to call you their best friend, all the cute Instagrams and the Snapchats and the things that are worth an aw, or at least a like, all of those things are worthwhile, but that doesn't make you a friend. And how can you know how you can lay your life down for your friend unless you talk about the important stuff? Unless you're talking about the meaningful things in life, how are you going to know how to serve your friend? How are you going to know how to surrender yourself, how to give up your life for your friend? If we're never having meaningful conversation, if we're never talking about feelings and hopes and discouragement and things, how are we ever going to know how to walk with our friends? But so often we just walk right past it. Jesus said, "You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves, because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now, you are my friends, since I have told you everything the Father has told me." A friend lets people into their life. A friend trusts with the sensitive stuff, with the stuff that other people may reject, that other people may not accept you for. But a friend, a true friendship, is when you can step out and you can say, this is where I'm broken. This is where I'm hurting. And you're willing to trust. You're willing to talk about the meaningful stuff. A friend seeks counsel. You guys, it is hard for most people to ask for advice. To actually say, I don't know what to do here. I'm stuck. I'm weak. I need wisdom. That's hard for a lot of people. But with a friend, you're willing to talk about the deeper stuff. And that is how you discover how to lay your life down for one another. And I want you to think about your friendships. Do you know how to walk with your friends? Do you know how to lay your life down for your friends? Or is it at such a superficial level where it's like, well, I know where we like to ride bikes. I know what store we like to go to. I know where we like to eat. All important things. That's all good. Do you know how to lay your life down for them? Because if you're not talking about the meaningful stuff, that's going to be really hard to do. So, how do you have deeper conversations? Okay? Here are 5 levels of conversation, and they have developed these scientifically. So if for those of you, you're like, just give me facts. Here's the facts. They have discovered these things scientifically. Level 1 of communication is cliche. This is where you go, nice day, isn't it? Okay, this is something you would say to a total stranger in an elevator, right? You would say that to literally anyone, right? Lovely day, yes. Man, it's hot. You ever notice that? When you're in a situation where it seems like something ought to be said, what does everybody start a conversation with? The weather, right? Man, it's hot today, huh? Why are you wearing a long sleeve shirt? Shut up, you're not my friend, right? So, cliche is where all of us are willing to go. Then there's facts. I have band practice after school. This is stuff that you would be willing to tell probably just about anybody who asks, right? You don't have to have a relationship with them as long as they're not pulling up in some like rusty old white van and be like, hey kid, what you doing after school? Well, sir, I have band practice until 4:30 and then I'll be wandering home all by myself, right? Okay, but facts, You're willing to share facts. You're willing to tell people, hey, this is what I do. This is where I go to school. No risk there. There's nothing. You're not really taking any chances telling facts. Level 3, opinions. This is where you start to share your opinion about some things. Now, this is where you start to step out. This is where, now, you don't have to necessarily be good friends with somebody to share your opinion. You might share your opinion with somebody that you hate just to tick them off, right? But it is, you are stepping out there. You are starting to go like, well, this is what I think about this. I think my math teacher is out to get me. I saw him in a rusted white van and driving and asked me what I was, but this opinion, now, an opinion is a risk because you could potentially be told that you're wrong or someone could disagree. And so this is where a relationship begins to get a bit deeper. In your relationships, are you willing to share what you think? Are you willing to share your opinion on things? That's level 3. Level 4 is feelings. This is where we're getting into the tall grass. All right, this is where the water starts to get a little deep, whatever metaphor you want to use for in over your head kind of a thing. Where you are willing to share emotionally. You're willing to share a feeling of saying, I'm so discouraged about how I'm doing on this team. I'm really sad and I'm discouraged and kind of losing hope. There's some depth there. You're being vulnerable there. And sometimes, probably a lot of times in most of our lives, this is where we tend to get a little gun shy because we've been burned. Because we've opened up and said, I'm pretty discouraged about this. And somebody goes, why? That's no big deal. Oh, okay, back to cliche. Nice day, isn't it? And it keeps us there. But feelings is where we start to begin to exhibit trust in another person. You guys, in your life, do you trust another person with your feelings? Will you trust someone else with not being okay? And let's flip it. Are you somebody that someone could trust with their feelings? Where you would be okay with them not being okay? And that you'd be faithful to them and you'd walk with them. Level 5 is needs. And just like feelings, this is a really deep level of communication where you are willing to say, this is a need I have. And if you need something, it means you don't have it. It means you're weak. It means that you're vulnerable. And a lot of times we are not willing to go there because no, I can make it. I'm okay. I'm good. The number of times I have turned down food when I'm starving. You guys, don't do that. But no, that's one of those things where we don't want to seem vulnerable, we don't want to seem weak, but needs is a deep way to communicate with someone and to have your conversations go deeper. Now, I am not saying that you're supposed to live on level 5. You are not supposed to live at level 4 where you're just like always blonde and not blonde. Okay, but so often we are unwilling to touch level 4 and 5. We might tiptoe into level 3 sometimes, but most of the time we are most comfortable just stay at level 1, stay at level 2, just kind of talk about the facts, talk about what everybody's going to agree with, keep everybody happy. And you guys, our relationships stay shallow. Our relationships never go anywhere. If we are unwilling to go deeper in our conversations, if we are unwilling to be vulnerable, we will never have deep relationships. You will never have deep friendships. And for those of you that are here tonight and you're like, that's okay. Okay. I'm telling you that at some point, you'll get tired of those friendships. You'll get tired of it not ever being deeper than that. You might be okay right now, and so I'm not going to argue with you. But I'm telling you, I don't have as much life experience as Tim has, but I'm telling you with what I have that you're going to get tired of that. And you're going to want more. Friends, tell us when we're screwing up. This is one of the things, this is one of the reasons, this is one of the excuses that people use for not having deep friendships. Well, why don't, well, no, she was rude to me. She totally called me out. He totally judged me. And we back off. Proverbs 27 says this, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. Have you ever seen a tool be sharpened? Yes. It's violent. There is grinding, there are sparks, and whatever is being sharpened is actually being reshaped. A lot of times when it's like on a knife or an axe, it's hard to tell. It just looks like sparks and things, but then it ends up sharp. But the reason it's sharp is because it's been ground down and it's been re-edged. So it's being reshaped. And here, this is saying, as iron sharpens iron, a friend sharpens a friend. If a friend comes to you in love, do you trust them that it's in love? Do you trust them that it's because they care for you? Are you willing to be reshaped by that person, by what they have to say? Or is your reaction, ouch, 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 don't, stop, no. Oh, I'm not hanging out with him anymore. And we laugh because we're like, yeah. Yeah. None of us like it. It's going to be an unpleasant experience. But man, when you're done with that axe, when you've reshaped it and it's got that new edge, it has a completely new use. As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend, and it may be a violent process. It may feel like a violent process. But here is a truth. The desire to avoid discomfort will keep your relationships dull. If your expectation of friendship is that everything's always just okay, everybody's always just happy, my friends just encourage me and everything's just happy, your relationships will stay dull and they will never break the surface. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you are thinking through relationships that you have right now where you've known somebody for forever. And it's always just about the happy stuff. Some of you have experienced friends confronting you, pointing out things that you're like, shut up, it hurts. Are you willing to let that relationship go there? Are you willing to listen to that? Another proverb is, wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. From an enemy. An enemy. Okay. Have you ever heard the term that somebody's a yes man? Okay. So if somebody's a yes man, it means that they'll just tell you whatever you want to hear. And a lot of powerful people surround themselves with yes men, where all these people do is tell them how great they are, tell them how they're never wrong, tell them how they're perfect and genius, and they will never confront. They will never say, hey, you're missing it. They will never say, hey, that's not going to be good for you. They will never put up a roadblock. And people will surround themselves with yes people. And they end up so broken because they've got no one around them to sharpen them. They've got no one around them to make them the person that God has designed them to be, that God is calling them to be. So I throw it back out to you. What do your relationships look like? Have you surrounded yourself? Have you insisted that the only people that are allowed to hang out with you are yes people? Have you demanded that your friend group, no one's allowed to disagree with you? No one's allowed to tell you you're being a jerk. No one's allowed to tell you that maybe the decision you made back there was a wrong decision and maybe you need to make something right. Nobody's allowed to do that. You have surrounded yourself with people who say, oh yes, you're wonderful and you're great. And no, I thought the way that you screamed at her was just lovely. And we surround ourselves with yes people, and we're never willing to let people tell us when we screwed up. Are you that kind of friend for anybody else? Are you willing to step out in your friendships and say, not okay? I'm willing to walk with you. I'm willing to sharpen you. I'm willing to love you. I'm not rejecting you. I'm not turning away from you, but not okay. Are you willing to be that friend to somebody else? Is there anybody who will let you into their life in that way? And is there anyone that you will let into your life in that way as well? Best friends are there when we need them. I always thought it was a great thing that I'm comfortable. I feel like I can walk into a room and it's like, it's not a room full of strangers. It's just friends I haven't met yet, right? And so I can walk in and I can get into conversations with people. When new people come to youth group, for me, in my personality, it's not a big deal to meet new people. Some of you, you're like, friends, yes, people. Tell me I'm wonderful. For somebody with my personality, which is how God designed me, and that's okay for those of you who are uncomfortable with it, that's okay. But for me, I have always thought that it was such a wonderful thing to just be able to make conversation, to walk around and be part of a party with people that I don't know. And by the time that I leave the party, I have some new acquaintances and new people that I'd call friends. And we hang out and we're on the drive home. And it's like, yeah, well, that was pretty fun. I enjoyed that. And that's great. And I always looked at it, I'm like, cool. But this can betray me when I decide that that's all I really need in life. When that's as deep as the relationships need to go. As long as I can stay up here, and just kind of know you and afterward play dork ball or go to Legends and just kind of, this is great. And if I don't believe that relationships need to go any deeper or can go any deeper, it can betray me. Look at this. A man with many friends, many companions, may come to ruin. But there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. It may seem awesome to be the life of the party. Maybe you've been places where you look at somebody who's working the room and somehow they always end up out in the center of the dance circle and you're just like, man, to have that kind of self-confidence. Or they can just talk to anybody. And when they talk, like people gravitate toward them. They're just like, ooh, he seems like an interesting person. And we look at that and we're like, oh, that would be so awesome. But let's just look at culture. Let's look at the celebrities on a regular basis that end up on the front of magazines that are struggling with alcohol abuse or drug abuse, suicide, who feel completely alone. And you look at them and you're like, what? They are it. They are everything I wish I could be. When what's happened is that they don't have friends there when they need them. Their relationships have never gone to a depth where when they're struggling, they have somebody who's willing to walk alongside them. When they make a mistake, there's somebody who comes alongside them and calls it a mistake and sharpens them and walks with them and encourages their life. They don't have anybody. And they end up alone. And so even though they're surrounded by thousands of people, they're alone in the room. And we put value on that. We say, man, to be the popular guy. Man, to be the girl who has all these people flocking to her and adoring her, I wish I could be like that. A man with many companions may come to ruin if they're depending on that. But there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother. You guys, are you willing to demand that? Are you willing to not settle for anything less than a friend who sticks closer than a brother? It's up to you. But this is what God designed us for. To have someone in our life who's there when we need them. A friend is always loyal, and a brother is born to help in a time of need. And there have been so many times in my life where people that I've called friends, that I've even said like, oh, well, I'm good friends. And I see on Facebook that they just had this major thing that they've been going through, and this major loss that they've been struggling with, or depression or something, and I had no idea. And because our friendship had never gone to a deeper level, I couldn't be there for them when they needed me. How about you? Do you have somebody who knows you well enough, that you have allowed to know you well enough? Man, when you're going through something, they're there. And maybe it doesn't feel good when they're there because it's intrusive and maybe they're calling you on something or whatever. But do you have somebody who will step in and will be there for you? Are you that kind of friend where you'll step in, you'll be like, I'm not going to just stand back. I know they're going through this. And you insert yourself because you're there in the relationship. I hope, my prayer for you guys is that we would stop settling for just hanging out. Now, of course, we can't be best friends with everyone. We can't be at this deep level with everyone, and that's not what I'm suggesting. But man, because it takes time, because it takes effort, because sometimes it's scary, and maybe you've been burned, these are not reasons to back off. These are not reasons to accept, we go to the same school. Besties. We're in the same choir. We like the same soccer team. There is so much more, you guys, and I don't want for us to settle. I want for you to be willing to go to this deeper level in your friendship where people are willing to step in. They're willing to love you unconditionally. They know you well enough to step in when you're in need, and that you would be willing and able to do the same in their life. Because the stuff that Joe was talking about last week is so important. That we would be willing to be accountable to somebody, that we would be willing to be not okay with somebody. You don't always have to be smiling. You don't always have to make everybody think everything's okay. And there are people who live trapped in that lie, that they're alone, that they can't tell anybody their problem, they can't let anybody know they're sad, they can't let anybody know that they're struggling with something, and they end up self-harming, they end up committing suicide, and everybody around them goes, what? You guys, we were designed for relationship. We were designed to walk with one another. But there are going to be some choices that you've got to make. Are you willing to have level 3, 4, and 5 conversations? Are you willing to let people into your business? Are you willing to step into other people's business? Because that's the relationship God's designed us for. It's how He made us. So right now, we're going to go to our detour groups. And I want to encourage you, listen to this, listen. What is shared in a detour group stays in a detour group. This is not stuff that we come back and you share you should hear what so-and-so said, or so-and-so said this about so. It's also, have a seat, hold on. It's also not a place to gossip and to tell stories about people. We want to give you the opportunity to share your heart and to talk about, maybe you disagree with some of the things that I've said. You're like, Jeff's full of it. That's not what a best friend is. Cool. Talk about that. Dialogue about that. I'm okay with that. I've got plenty of yes people around me. I'm just kidding. Just talk about that. Be vulnerable. Be real with one another. You don't have to put on the happy face. You don't have to pretend like you've got a bunch of friends if you don't. So we're going to break up into our detour groups.